The recording has started.
I forgot. Oops. Okay, we're gonna get the music here going here now. Okay, here we go.
Diving deep into the soul, bringing low, we can believe that we no longer need diving deep into the soul, bringing low, so we can believe that we no longer need diving deep into the storm, bringing love, so we can release that which we no longer need diving deep into the storm, bringing love, so we can release that which we no longer need diving into the storm, bringing love, so we can release that which we no longer need diving deep into the storm, bringing love, so we can release that which we no longer need. to the sun, bringing love, so we can release darkness we no longer need.
Aloha. Good evening. This is Andrew Aloha live out of Flagstaff, Arizona. Spiritual Image Productions on BlogTalkRadio and free conference call and YouTube, establishing and maintaining right relationships for the human body. Aloha and welcome to tonight's Andrew Aloha Live. Tonight we're interviewing with Andrew D. Basagio in The Truth About Mars. And just to let you know, American lawyer, writer, chrononaut, 21st century visionary team leader of Project Pegasus and founder president of M.A.R.S, Andrew D. Basiago, claims to be one of 140 kids in the late 60s and early 70s that participated in a DARPA time-space program called Project Pegasus, which succeeded in using previously undisclosed Nikola Tesla papers to harness something called radiant energy, a universal force which bends space and time and allows for real-time teleportation travel as well as time travel. If you want to just get a hold of, I want to say doctor, I don't know why, but anyhow, Andrew D. Basagio, you can go to www.andy2020.net and get more information on him if you want to check him out. And aloha, Dr. Basagio. I don't know why I want to call you doctor, but I'm calling you doctor anyhow. But how's it going for you?
Oh, hi, Andrew. Well, you know, here in the States, we don't call Juris Doctors doctors, but we do throughout the rest of the Anglophone world, including in the United Kingdom, where I was a doctor when I was a graduate student at Cambridge, because I had my Juris Doctor at that time. So I am a doctor, but I don't use that term.
Interesting. I didn't even know that. So, anyhow, and we're going to come back and talk to you, Dr. Andrew D. Basagio, here in a few minutes. I'm just going to want to give a big aloha to all of our underwriters that help make this show happen from week to week, month to month, year to year, beginning with the 90-Day Ascension Journey at www.90dayascensionjourney.com. When you sign up for the 90-Day Ascension Journey, you will be facilitated with defining and redefining your soul true life purpose. You will be assisted with finding out what Ascension means to you. On this journey, you will be provided with tools, techniques, and systems to empower you to connect and reconnect with yourself, your emotions and feelings in your mind, body, and spirit. Through a universal soul-centered process, you will be going through a lifelong transformation that will allow you to move forward with your endeavors and never look back if you dare. And I apologize because my sinuses are going crazy right now, so it's making it hard for me to read. But anyhow, if you want to check out the book version of this, you can go to spiritualimageproductions.com, or Google Andrew Aloha, or go to the 90dayascensionjourney.com, and 90dayascensionjourney.com, and you can get the book and check it out for yourself. And if you feel like you want to go the step, the extra mile, then you can do the mentoring program. I've done it with a number of people, and the transformations that have taken place with them has been pretty astronomical, if you ask me. But anyhow, I want to go ahead and go on to Anovate at www.spiritualimageproductions.com or .anovate.com. And Anovate is a French word, A-N-O-V-I-T-E, with over 25,000 scientific papers published on colostrum, a 90-day guarantee, and the winner of the Healthy Living People's Choice Award twice over. Anovate focuses on helping people with weight loss, anti-aging, heart disease, diabetes, depression, high blood pressure, asthma, allergies, rheumatoid arthritis, inflammation, gout, lupus, fibromyalgia, Crohn's disease, cancer, ulcers, the polio virus, chronic infections, digestive orders, Alzheimer's disease, autoimmune disease, thymus gland, mental clarity, maintenance and protection of the immune system, and also synthesis and repair of the RNA and DNA, much more. And just to let you know, I've been taking this stuff for like about a year now, and the fungus, the toenail fungus that I have, it seems to be going away, and it's I believe it's helping me with diabetes. I was diagnosed with diabetes several years ago, and I think it's helping me with that as well. So you can check it out for yourself, see what you think. You know, we also have Maha Dakini Lorraine at www.mahadikini.com. Mahadikini Lorraine's life has been a personal journey exploring sexuality and spirituality for over 20 years. She's a certified tantric counselor and tantric healer and a certified mind sound teacher. Mahadikini Lorraine is also a graduate of Margot Anand's year-long Sky Dancing Tantra Facilitator Training Program, as well as a current member of the American Association of Sex Educators, Counselors, and Therapists, and charter member of the Association of Sexual Energy Professionals. She regularly attends trainings and conferences to keep current with the latest research and information on sexual education. And for those of you that are interested, she's back in San Francisco now. So if you want to set up an appointment with her, now is the time to do it, and you can go from there. So anyhow, we're back to Dr. Basagio here now. I'm just going to call you Doctor. That's all I said. Anyhow, we're back to him, and we talked already with Dr. Basagio. I don't know why I keep on. Anyhow, I'm just going to do it. But a few weeks ago, and he talked about teleportation and time travel, and his father being involved with a lot of the stuff, and that's how he got introduced to it. And now he also mentioned that he had gone to Mars and back at least one time. Is that correct, Andrew?
No, Andrew. Actually, what I stated is that I went to Mars about 40 times round trip.
Oh, really?
My
Wow.
first trip in July of 1981 and my final journey there in May of 1984. I was one of the visitors. There were settlers and visitors, and I was a visitor. So
wow.
It was so easy to get to Mars. Well, not easy. It was actually pretty nauseating in the process. But it was so technically easy to accomplish that we went up very frequently.
Now, when did you start going to Mars? Let's put it that way.
Well, when the country first started going to Mars was 1964. That's the first time American astronauts crash landed on Mars. The program I was in, which was under the CIA rather than under NASA, first put U.S. personnel on Mars via jumper, we believe, in the late 1970s. My first jump, I was by no means, while I was one of the earliest teleportees and chrononauts in the country, I was by no means the first Mars visitor. I think there were already as many as 95,000 visitors by the time I first went in July of 1981. I'm just able to speak out. Quite frankly, one of the only ones to recover their memories, because there was a massive program in place of blocking people's memories, which is part of what we're resolving now. We're breaking down those memory blocks, and more people are coming forward.
Interesting.
But I first went up in July of 1981 when I was not yet 20 years of age. Wow.
And and then you finished your last mission, your last jump in 1984. Is that correct?
Right. It was about a month before I graduated from college from UCLA in June of '84. So that would be May of 1984.
Wow. And so well, first of all, were you a CIA operative? Is that the case? Is that what you're talking about?
No, I was never a CIA operative. DARPA's Project Pegasus, which was the U.S. time space program, was kind of affiliated with the CIA, which I served in childhood, in the sense that the CIA was utilizing the quantum access that time travel affords to promulgate reports about past and future events that would help the government engage in contingency planning for present and future events.
Interesting.
I then later, that was in childhood, I then served in the Mars Jump Room program, which was under CIA and a set of defense contractors, basically, Parsons, Hughes, and Lockheed Dunkworth, when I was in college. But I was never a CIA operative. I was basically a chrononaut and then an astronaut for the CIA.
Got it.
Specialized.
And what is a chrononaut?
A chrononaut is a time traveler, just as an astronaut is a star traveler. And so I'm essentially, we don't really validate who we were, but we were American astronauts. I don't think there's no need to quibble. We were the astronauts who served and went farther, and longer, at more risk, at greater danger, and yet we didn't take the pictures in the fancy spacesuit, and we didn't sort of claim the title astronaut. But I mean, compare somebody like Dr. Edgar Mitchell to myself, right? We both were affiliated with the Navy. We both held doctoral degrees. We both went into space, but he landed on the moon once, and I went to Mars 40 times.
Wow.
So I have just as much a claim to the sobriquet of astronaut as Ed Mitchell. It's just a cultural thing. You see, we weren't enculturated, either those of us participating in the secret space program or those of us who have studied it. The people who really look into this literature, we don't tend to think of the participants as astronauts, but in some ways we were greater astronauts than the ones who were lauded as the astronauts.
Right? They travel to the spaces in between, and you travel to the actual planet itself, right?
Well, and our exploits were in many cases more impressive. I mean, I saved 6 American lives in separate incidents on Mars.
Wow.
And I don't really think you can say anything in terms of the saving of American personnel in the lunar program. We had, of course, the fact that Buzz Aldrin improvised that big pen to create a device, a handle to basically pull to jettison the command module from the surface of the moon, so that he saved his life and that of Neil Armstrong. And then we have the saving of the lives of the Apollo 13 astronauts by slingshotting around the moon and then moving up into the command module, and basically moving around inside the different compartments of the spacecraft in a way that they had not intended. But we were fully operational on the surface of a terrestrial planet for which we did not need specialized suits or respirators. We brought respirators, but after the first jump, I didn't use mine because I knew I didn't need it. And we got into scrapes, At one time, my fellow jumper, Bernard Mendez, collapsed in a dead faint about 3/4 of a mile from one of the jump room facilities. And I carried him in on my shoulder. I actually had to put him down on the ground 3 times just to rest, because I knew if I didn't, he would be eaten. And so, I earned my props on the Martian surface. Believe me, it was a difficult environment, and we were confronted with life-threatening challenges. And those of us who are here to tell the story rose to the occasion. I think it's something we should be very proud of individually and as a group and as Americans.
So what do you mean, Andrew? Eaten and life-threatening issues going on?
Well, there are about 30 major land animals on Mars. About 5 or 6 of them are carnivores. 2 of them are inevitably lethal. One is a large reptile about 16 feet tall that looks sort of like a Tyrannosaurus Rex, and it is extremely fast. I once saw it run about 70 miles per hour.
Wow.
And there's also an insectivoid predator that looks like a cross between a large grasshopper with multiple appendages and a small garbage truck. It is built to eat. It basically has broad, long, sharp teeth that are like sabers, like samurai swords. And it is designed to devour. And if one got anywhere near those, it was very unlikely that one was going to survive. In fact, we were taught this protocol that we should start running around in zigzag to just see if we could get the creature to be bored pursuing its prey. And usually that didn't work. But what I meant was, with Bernie laying there on the ground unconscious, I found his pulse and I could see that he was respirating, but I couldn't rouse him. So I said, well, I'm either going to carry him in here on my shoulder, do a fireman's carry, or he's probably going to be eaten out here.
Right.
So by one of the one of the inevitably lethal predators, because Mars is a post-climax civilization. Mars is kind of what Richard Hoagland has described it as partly, but he leaves out the life forms. But he basically has described Mars as a big muddy wasteland. As a result of the solar system catastrophe of about 9,500 BC, Mars was flooded by a tremendous flood, just as Earth was, after its polar ice caps melted. And it is largely a muddy planet. There's very little vegetation. And so the life support that the animal life form rely on is pretty much predation of other creatures. The Cousteau Society, and Captain Cousteau and his crew did a film on Clipperton Island, which is a desert atoll about 1,300 miles off the coast of Baja, California. And I think Mars can be compared to Clipperton Island in the sense that with a planet consisting mostly of muddy wasteland and very harsh conditions for survival, the keystone species at the top rely on rapacious predation of other creatures. And that's how you get your nutrient cycling. On Clipperton Island, there's species of crabs that just eat each other.
Wow.
So Mars isn't that flat of an ecosystem, but it's darn close to that. It's a very flat, fragile ecosystem, and that's why one of the reasons I'm also speaking out is that I think we better honor the prime directive on Mars and try not to destroy its ecology and civilization, because they're far more tenuous in their existence than our ecology and civilization are on Earth.
Yeah, wow. So, I mean, there's a lot of questions that I really want to ask you, but so, and I'm just going to let you elaborate on whatever you want to, but, so, okay, first of all, what are some of the other species that you're talking about of these animals that 30 animals?
Well, Mars has animals like animals on Earth presently. In other words, animals that are still alive and not extinct, like, for example, horses.
Oh, really?
Mars has Mars has animals that I should say horses and cows and cattle.
Are they the same size as the horses and cows here, or are they bigger?
Well, usually if animals are the same as animals on Earth, usually they're smaller because Mars is smaller. Mars is about 40% the volume of Earth.
Got it.
So species can be smaller. For example, it has a Sasquatch species, but unlike ours, the Sasquatch are about 6 feet tall rather than 8 or 9 feet tall.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
The indigenous humanoids on Mars, the Homo martis martis species, are smaller than humans, most humans on Earth.
And you're saying that these humanoids are they're humans? They're like some of the Native Americans that you lived here years ago here in Arizona or whatever?
No, they're more like the classic Martians with small, spindly bodies, narrow heads, pointy ears. The adult males often have antennae coming out of their forehead.
Oh,
Just
really?
saying that the indigenous Martians, the ones that were there when our people got there in antiquity, generally are smaller than Earthlings because they're in a smaller environment.
Interesting.
So
And are they actually green, or do they have a skin like ours as well, color?
They have more of a pallid or cadaverous hue. They're not greenish. They're more grayish, like
interesting.
Like a corpse.
Got it.
They're very white. Yeah, because all of the Martian humanoids, for the most part, live primarily underground. So they're basically pasty-faced and white as a result of the fact that they don't have a need for pigment because they spend most of their life cycle underground.
And how many of these?
Wait.
Go ahead.
Let's go back. I was getting to the fact that some Martian animals are like the ones that still exist on Earth. Some are like animals that once existed on Earth but are extinct. For example, the plesiosaur species Plesiosaurus was an aquatic reptile before the KT extinction that destroyed dinosaurs. On Mars, the plesiosaur creature is a terrestrial creature, and it's very commonplace. In fact, Bernard Mendez told me one time that there are many planets in the cosmos. So the plesiosaurus which is basically has a bulky body like a tortoise, a long neck like a snake, and a head like a horse but with teeth in it, is a very common species in the cosmos. So there are creatures presently on Mars that are like creatures that once existed on Earth, but are no longer, that are extinct on Earth. Then there are hybrids of known Earth species. For example, both on Mars and in our Mars anomaly research undertaken by my organization, the organization I founded, Mars Anomaly Research Society, known as M.A.R.S, by its initials Mars. We both encountered and we have found crosses between creatures with the upper body of an adult male human and the lower body of an arachnid like a grub or a scorpion or some other insect.
Interesting.
That's not uncommon. So there's a question of hybridization on Mars that remains to be answered. And yet a lot of evidence is being gathered, and some will be revealed later this year by one of my research associates. I'll let him do the announcement.
So you're
real evidence of hybridization on Mars. And then some creatures on Mars are like creatures that never existed on Earth and that we encountered for the first time on Mars.
Wow. So you're talking about one of these creatures, animals, if you want to call it that, is half human and like kind of like a satire. You know, in the mythology, there's a satire. They have the half body of a horse.
In fact, the hybrid animals of classic mythology, Greek mythology, for example, the Egyptian pantheon, were mixes of species, of known Earth species, like an animal that's, well, for example, Sekret, the Egyptian goddess of the harvest, was a female who was, her upper extremity was a human female, complete with breasts and a belly button and so forth. And then she transitioned below the belly button into a scorpion. Well, it's a scorpion person, big man or woman. We both saw those on Mars, and we found them in our Mars anomaly research, and here we find them in the Egyptian pantheon. So this is going to make us sort of reformat our understanding of why these animal-human hybrids show up in the Egyptian pantheon and also in Greek mythology. Apparently, it wasn't fanciful, it was illustrative of actual species.
Wow.
When Earth and Mars were in contact and Martians were coming here. And that's why people know what a Martian looks like. You ever wonder that? If humans haven't been to Mars, how is it that there's a universal understanding of an adult male Martian having antennae coming out of its forehead?
Exactly.
Some do. Okay, so that really is going to reformat our understanding of antiquity on Mars, but also on Earth. That human civilization understood more about Mars in the past than it does today, because we were in an interplanetary confederation with Mars and another planet that was destroyed.
Interesting.
I'm just saying that it's conspicuous that there is a pattern of hybridization of Mars species. We're going to be learning a lot more about that in this century, in the 21st century.
Now, did some of these male humanoids, Martians, did they have two antennas or one?
The ones that have antennae, they come out of the lower temple, and they're sense organs. I was told one time what they do. I think they sense vibration. They can sense things like air temperature, and maybe other things like extremely low frequency vibrations or sounds. They're basically sense organs that go beyond the range of our sight and hearing.
Got it. And again, did they have one antenna coming out of their head or just two?
They had two. They had one on either side of their temple.
Okay, so it was two. So interesting. And about how many humanoids of these Martians do you think exist on Mars now?
Well, after I published my landmark paper, The Discovery of Life on Mars, in December of 2008, I was contacted by Virginia Olds, who was a senior career CIA officer. I had met her first in Project Pegasus when I was a kid. And Virginia said that my paper was just very accurate, and she congratulated me. And she said that the Martians like us, those are the Homo Martis terras, which means people on Mars, and the Homo Martis Martis, which means Martian people on Mars, basically the indigenous Martian, that they live cooperatively, primarily underground, and there are approximately 1 million living primarily underground on Mars. So the 2 of the 5 primary humanoids, they're cooperative species, and they cooperate with each other, and they live primarily underground. They're about 1 million in number.
So that's not very many people there. 1 million.
Correct. And that's another reason why Mars is fragile. I mean, we have 7 billion humans. They have 1 million humanoids.
Wow.
So, and that's demonstrative of the lower life support on Mars, the fact that it's a desert planet with less life support, less water, less food supplies, and it can only sustain a much smaller carrying capacity.
Oh, that's right. It's a smaller planet. So, do any of them live on top? All of them live underneath the planet?
Well, they're not. I mean, there's the 2 major humanoid types, and then there's like a terrestrial, gray, extraterrestrial type. There's a Sasquatch type, and then there are these tiny little ones, Homo Martis de minimis, that burrow in the ground. So if we're just going to isolate the ones that are like us, that are basically around our size and humanoid as we would perceive it, namely the ones that are the descendants of our visitors to Mars in antiquity. During the high Egyptian civilization, humans from Earth went to Mars and reproduced, and their descendants are still reproducing there. Then there are the indigenous Martians that were there when they got there.
Oh, wow.
Those 2 types live underground in the sense that we live underground when we live in, a basement of a building. In other words, they live in chambers that they construct underground, mostly by excavating natural caverns and so forth and caves underground and equipping them technically with electrical and pneumatic control systems. So when I say they live underground, I don't mean they live in the soil, but the tiny little ones actually burrow in the soil.
Oh, no, I got it.
And then the other 2 are terrestrial in nature. The extraterrestrial type species and the Sasquatch type species are land animals, but the more evolved humanoid, the Homo Martis terras, or the Earth people on Mars, who are basically our genetic cousins, and then the indigenous Martians, the Homo Martis Martis, who were there when our ancestors got there, they have been living underground since the solar system catastrophe. They created an underground civilization because, look, I mean, most of the vegetation on the surface of the planet was ripped off, and they're very vulnerable to abduction from space, to being picked off by predators on the surface. There is almost no ionosphere in the atmosphere, so they're vulnerable to skin disorders and so forth. So the Martians that are related to us and related to the ones that were there when we got there have created an underground civilization in the wake of that massive cataclysm 11,500 years ago.
Wow. So the native humanoids, I think is a good phrase to use. The native humanoids that were there initially, are they the ones that have the antennas and the other ones don't, or they all do?
Precisely. Yes, they're human like us, but you can tell that they're not Homo sapiens sapiens. Just like when we have an encounter with a gray extraterrestrial, we know we're not dealing with an Earthling, right? We're not dealing with a human being from Earth. So, and yet, when you're interacting with the indigenous Martians, they're very much like human beings. I mean, for example, I used to walk through one of their villages on the way to delivering some data to an American running a telecommunications outpost in their dilapidated brick city. And every once in a while, I'd walk past one of the buildings, and there'd be a human being, an adult human looking out. But there might be one of their children. In fact, there were more of their children in that settlement than adults. I guess because they were just left unattended. They were just wondering who this human being was walking through their town. And they were very cute kids. They were very, very much like Tibetan kids, looking out. And yet those were the progeny of the Homo Marcus. Those were the true Martians. So I think we could say that the Martians look so much like us that their children are really indistinguishable from the children of some ethnic groups on Earth.
No, those kids did not have antennas. Is that correct?
Yes, the children do not have antennas, nor do the females. The antennae coming out of the forehead is a male trait, and I noticed that it was only possessed some of the time. So I don't know. It might be a trait that's specific to the individual. So
the antenna, would it come out of their head and like a car antenna? They all of a sudden they need to sense something, so it would all of a sudden elongate, or was it just like a tail, of a dog or something?
Well, what it is it's about 2.5 inches, and it's a prehensile extension that they push out their forehead that looks sort of like an asparagus, and it's basically an organ that is recessed into the forehead, and that and they can push out if they're going to use it to sense something.
Yeah, it would elongate like a hydraulic system type of thing, and it would come out of their head if they needed to sense something or something. Is that correct?
Yeah, their head, you can think of like the eyes against the eyelids of some frog species. Their antennae are in their head, but when they need to use them, they're projected out of the head within like a little kettle drum, like a little drum that they press with the sense organ itself. Now, in other words, it's sort of like an erectile organ that gets extended out when they want to use it.
Exactly.
I don't know whether that was volitional. We never learned whether they could control that, but I think they could control it. That's how some people seemingly have the ability to sort of twitch their ears in a given direction.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a sense organ, and it's recessed within the forehead until they need to use it.
So, Andrew, did you ever meet any of these beings at all, and like in person, or touch them, or just?
Yes, I met three astronauts of the first type on Earth in the summer of 1970 when they were in an aerospace liaison meeting with my father and several other American aerospace engineers.
Go ahead.
On Mars, I met the second type, Homo Marcus, the indigenous Martians. When I would walk through, I didn't meet them, but I would see them. When I walked through the dilapidated brick city near the jump room that we call the corkscrew, to hand off that data to the technician in the telecommunications book. And I had one meeting of a direct nature with one of the Homo Marcus at the mouth of one of the jump room facilities. And he showed Courtney Hunt and I. He took us kind of on a tour of his underground residence, of their underground civilization. So I had something in the nature of a diplomatic exchange with one of the Homo Marcus. I saw one of the Homo Marcus extraterrestrialis, one of the sort of gray ET lemur type hybrids, up on the roof of the jump room known as the corkscrew. I did not see any of the Sasquatch, and I heard some of the Homo Marcus de minimis, some of the tiny ones, probably when I was crushing them to death by accidentally stepping.
Wow.
As we all were.
Right.
That's unfortunate, but we did not exercise appropriate endangered species protection, sanctity of human life values. That's one of the reasons I'm speaking out. So there were 5 types. I met 3 of the first type on Earth, but never on Mars. I would see the second type frequently when I was walking through a particular area, and I had one diplomatic level type meeting with one of their elders when he took Courtney and I on a tour, essentially of his residence. I did not see any of the Sasquatch, although I met 2 Sasquatch on Earth in Adirondacks as a child. And then I saw one of the ET-like humanoids on Mars, on one of observing Courtney Hunt and William Stillings and I when we came out of the jumper known as the corkscrew one time in 1982, and then I heard the small species but did not see them, and never really detected them. It was very, very tiny.
So let me see if I can get this correct. First of all, you're saying that all of these species, or the five beings, are also on planet Earth. They live on planet Earth as well. Is that what I hear you saying?
No, I didn't say that at all.
Okay. Are there?
I met three of the first type when they were visiting Earth.
Oh, they were visiting.
They were an aerospace liaison on an air base in New Jersey. They were visiting us, but they're not indigenous to Earth. They're the descendants of the astronauts from Earth who went to Mars and stayed there and began reproducing among themselves and got cut off from us after the cataclysm. And I'm not sure that they can even reproduce with us today. They probably can. So they're basically Earthlings who are in a Mars civilization, but they've been reproducing in isolation for 11,500 years.
Wow.
The second type are indigenous Martians who probably came here because throughout the world, most people know what a Martian looks like. That, for example, they have antennae or can have antennae.
Right.
Well, they can. So where did that come from? That had to come from cultural diffusion of either Martians coming here in antiquity or human beings coming back to Earth explaining what a Martian looks like, right?
Got it.
For that to become commonplace knowledge in Earth civilization today. Okay, so they're indigenous Martians, and I don't think they come to Earth very frequently, but certainly some of the ET sightings that have been seen have probably been the indigenous Martians. And then they have a Sasquatch species that mirrors primate ecology on Earth, right? And they have an ET species that mirrors ufology on Earth. But I don't think either that Sasquatch species or that species of gray are indigenous to Earth. And then the tiny Martians are really like we would be if we went through such a ferocious process of natural selection that smaller and smaller individuals were breeding with each other to the point where somebody wasn't 6 feet tall, but 6 microns long.
Wow.
These things were like really small, humans, tiny humans the size of baby frogs.
So if I hear you correctly, then Martians do visit occasionally or frequently here to Earth, but none actually live here as their home.
Well, frequently is a loaded term. No, I don't think Martians visit Earth frequently, but I know they have visited Earth. Because in the case of, I know to a personal certainty that the first typology, the Homo Martis Terrae, have visited Earth in sophisticated craft, because I witnessed them do so in summer of 1970 at an air base in New Jersey, in the presence of my father, and there were 3 of them. And they were wearing silver suits with crimson red pentagon and with a lightning bolt going through it on their chest. And they had these respirating devices they were carrying because Mars has less oxygen than Earth per volume, so they have larger lungs. So they had a device I think they were using to actually step down the amount of oxygen that they were getting just breathing on Earth.
Wow.
Instead of being given oxygen, they were getting air with less oxygen in it. And they took off in a silver teardrop ship that went from like 0 to 12,000 miles per hour in a second. It was amazing. So they were capable of sophisticated space flight. I'm speculating that the second type, the Homo Martis Martis, those are the smaller ones with the spindly bodies, the narrow heads, the long faces, the pointy ears, sometimes the antennae in the adult male, have been to Earth, or that stories based on humans going to Earth, Earthlings going to Mars, and coming back to Earth and telling what they saw and what they encountered on Mars, has formed this cultural understanding of what a Martian looks like. because we do have such an understanding, and it is accurate. So I'm speculating that they've either been to Earth in antiquity, or the stories of what they looked like were brought back by Martian Earthlings who visited Mars and came back. In the same way that the different creatures in the Egyptian and Greek pantheon, mixes between humans and animals that exist on Mars, may have reached Earth through cultural diffusion rather than through imagination. That's what I'm speculating. But that's just speculation. As to the other kinds, I have no evidence that those three have ever been on Earth, although obviously we've been visited by many different types of gray ET species ourselves.
Got it. So what I want to do is I want to take a break right now, Andrew, and just take a breather. And there's so much more questions that I have for you. But I want to play a song from an album by Dr. Stephen Schwartz called Cellular Attunement. And basically, he's using sound to help heal people in various conditions or whatever.
Can I jump in?
Go ahead.
Andrew, can I jump in on this?
Yep.
I've met Steve Schwartz several times. This is how funny life is. I met Stephen Schwartz when I entered kindergarten. He came and he took the kids who were going to be in Pegasus through a day and an afternoon of experimentation with Mobius strips. Like he showed us when you make a Mobius strip from a piece of paper, by folding it over and taping it, it has one edge and one side. I next met Steve briefly, shook his hand and said, "Hi, it's funny seeing you after all these years." On Lincoln's birthday, what is that, February 12th? Did I have that right? 2011. I think that's right. On February 12th of 2011, I spoke before 1,500 people in Yelm, Washington, and he headed up. He did the keynote. He headed up the speech that night, and I spoke. And so I had contact with Steve Schwartz more than 40 years. I mean, I met him one day in kindergarten, and he brought us through those Mobius strips, and then I met him during my public address where I addressed the most number of people. So Steve and I are definitely kindred spirits of some kind. So let's dedicate tonight's show to Steve Schwartz.
Right.
I just had to jump in and mention that fact that I've met Steve twice, when I was 5 years old and when I was 50 years old.
Well, I'm assuming we're talking about the same Steve Schwartz, because there's a lot of them out there. But this guy,
Steve Schwartz, yeah. Steve Schwartz, the Psi pioneer. Is that who you're talking about?
The what pioneer?
Well, there's Stephen Schwartz, who is a prominent pioneer of parapsychological study.
He used to be a chiropractor. I think he still is, but he's dwelling into a sound chamber, this table that you couple with sound and colors or whatever, and he uses it to help people heal on emotional emotional level.
Maybe it's a different Steve Schwartz. I know the Steve Schwartz I'm talking about has branched out from psi research into healing and stuff, but I suspect we may be dealing with another Stephen Schwartz.
And maybe and that's what I was saying. So I don't know, but either way, this guy's got some interesting stuff that he's putting out there. And one of them is this Cellular Attunement album, which is geared to help people heal on emotional levels. And he calls the songs zones. He classifies them by zones. The one particular song I want to play right now is Zone 6. It has to do with conditional love versus unconditional love, helping people with identifying with that. So anyhow, I want to send out love, blessings, healings, angels of light and love to you, Andrew, and all your family and friends, to Dr. Stephen Schwartz, and also Serena Gabriel out of Tucson. The introductory song that we played, that was from her album Diving Deep, and she just had a birthday not too long ago. So to her and her family, to Dr. Stephen Schwartz and his family, to all our myself and all of my family and friends, to all our vehicles and places of residence to help take care of us, to the President of the United States. Oh my God, that guy needs some help. And all his entourage, to all the kids and the animals and plants and on the planet, especially the ones in need and concern. And let's send out some love, blessings, healings, angels of light and love to all those beings that are living on on Mars. I don't know how much help they need, but let's just send them out some stuff anyhow. Anyone you want to add to that, Andrew?
No, just everybody on planet Earth and everybody who has ever lived on planet Earth and ever will live on planet Earth, both
Right.
human and animal.
So, and to everyone else in need and concern, Zone 6, Conditional Love versus Unconditional Love by Dr. Stephen Schwartz is from his album Cellular Attunement, and we will be back. Yeah, it's really, really low, but it's playing. And we're back. This is Andrew Aloha live out of Flagstaff, Arizona, with Spiritual Image Productions on Blog Talk Radio, free conferencing call, and YouTube, establishing and maintaining right relationships through inbound. I apologize about that song because typically it's all the other songs seem to be a lot louder, but for whatever reason that seems really soft. Anyhow, we're here with Andrew D. Basagio, talking about the truth about Mars. And we've talked about him doing at least 41 trips to Mars and back over the years, with his last one being 1984. And the first one was when you were a kid. How old were you when you were a kid when you did your first trip over there? Is that correct, Andrew?
No, I was time traveling for DARPA's Project Pegasus in childhood. But I was brought into the Mars program 10 years later in the summer of 1980. I was trained in summer of 80 and summer of 81. And then I did my first jump from the West Coast jump room facility that was under the direction of somebody who was supposed to be dead, but was quite famous, a man by the name of Howard Hughes. That's a large part of the Mars story, is that Hughes was still alive. I made that first jump at age 19. In July of 1981. I then turned 20 2 months later in September of 1981. So I first jumped to Mars by myself via space elevator in July of 1981. I was probably about the 100,000th American to go.
Wow.
Many people went. In fact, we're still having the phenomenon where we'll hold a conference or a get-together at somebody's house, and somebody who thought their Mars experience was far more marginal or non-existent suddenly has a breakthrough and realizes that the reason they've been interested in our material is they too were part of the program. It was a very large program.
Wow.
I've met now several dozen people with memories from the program. Nine have come forward as whistleblowers, but I've met quite a few more than that. So I think we're going to continue to make investigative leads in this area.
I don't think I don't see any reason why to stop to begin with. I mean, there's so much information and that we can learn and work with. So now let me ask you this, Andrew. You said about 100,000 people have already made the jump to Mars and back.
No, we were told. I mean, William Whitecroft, that was Ed Baines during our training, said that I think he said something like, of the 97,000 people we've tried to settle on Mars thus far, only 7,000 have survived after 5 years.
Wow.
So that was kind of like grim statistics he was giving us. But my fellow whistleblower and fellow jumper, William Whitecroft, who was my martial arts instructor when I was on Pegasus, he was an Army guard that I crossed paths with on Mars, estimates that on any given day when we were there, let's say 1982, 83, 84, there were probably about 1,500 other Americans somewhere on the surface. So I think that's a more realistic picture of what was going on. I'm just saying that it wasn't, a handful of people have come forward. The people who've come forward are the people who've worked through their memory blocks that were instilled and met others and been able to bring this information forward. But we know from our own training and experiences that there were a substantial number of people there.
Wow.
And not just from the United States, also from Great Britain, from the former Soviet Union. So I'm just trying to kind of devalorize the whole situation. I was one of many. I was one of the first to speak out, but I was by no means the first American, one of the first American to go to Mars. I was one of the first Americans to participate in time travel back 10 years earlier. But man, by the time the Mars project was rolling, I mean, it had been going for a good 5 years by the time I got in.
So you only traveled for about 4 years, and did you see all these other people there, or did you see just a handful of people people from Earth there?
Imagine you've got 1,500 people, mostly from the United States, but also from Britain and the former Soviet Union, and you're in a big desert planet. There might be a tent somewhere or a tent city with Army guys. There might be a jump room facility with a couple other people there, a technician, a staff officer of some kind, another visitor. It's, you know how when you're traveling and you're making connections in smaller locations, like let's say a train station in a second or third tier city in America, you're often by yourself and you're running into somebody in some depot, maybe two people somewhere, or you're walking along a road and with one person and you run into a couple other people. It was like that. It was few and far between, but we did meet other people up there.
Got it.
I mean, we would have conversations. I would run into the team from Texas with another American who ran for president, as I did, Ross Perot. Ross was one of the jumpers.
Really?
40 years old, 41.
Oh,
yeah, and he would just talk his head off in his
right.
way, you know, entertain everybody.
Who were other notable people that jumped there that you recognized there or seen there or knew they were jumping there as well?
Well, let's see. Those who jumped included Mary Jean Eisenhower, who later went on to become the director of the People-to-People Ambassador Program. Admiral Stansfield Turner, who had been CIA director for President Jimmy Carter, was somebody I met jumping, sort of a luminary that I met jumping on the surface. Our immediate team included myself. Of the 10 young people who were trained with me, we know the identity of 5. Myself, William B. Stilling, William Cameron McCool, who would go on and become a space shuttle pilot, Regina Elvira Dugan, who would go on and be the director of DARPA, and then President Barack Obama was one of the 10 that we were trained with, along with Bernard Mendez. But then the luminaries I met included Mary Jean Eisenhower, Stan Turner, Ross Perot. They were pretty much cycling people with leadership ability through the program. One of the interesting things that Bernard Mendez revealed to me is that the intelligence analyst for the Mars jump room program was former President Richard Nixon in retirement in San Clemente after he resigned. So it's kind of odd to realize my file went across Nixon's desk, but apparently it did. So I think that Nixon was focusing on people who were team-oriented. I know they were looking for high intelligence, kind of an orientation to nature, a cooperative style, but also leadership ability. Because look, among those we've been able to identify as participating, they included 3 people who sought the presidency: Barack Obama, Ross Perot, and myself, and somebody who held a top position in a second-level diplomacy program, basically the Mary Jean Eisenhower.
Now, is that Eisenhower's granddaughter? Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah, that's his daughter. That's Laura Eisenhower's aunt, Mary Jean.
Oh, really? Okay.
The People-to-People Ambassadors Program. And I might add, apropos of the Eisenhower connection, they were working through family. There was an Eisenhower family connection, a Stillings family connection, a Basagio family connection. In other words, they were dealing in extensions of Richard Nixon's secret team, basically the Republican Party. But they were working within family units because they could maintain project secrecy by having sons working with fathers and aunts working with nieces and so forth, just as a matter of operational security. And so in addition to 3 men who sought the presidency, one of whom so far has won the presidency twice, Barack Obama, they also had a woman who would hold a top position in leadership, and that was Mary Jean Eisenhower with the People-to-People Ambassadors Program. And then there were career intelligence people like Stan Turner. In fact, when Stan Turner came over and joined up with Bernard Mendez and I didn't think it was him. I thought it was Peter Byrne, the Bigfoot researcher, because he was dressed sort of in, as a great white hunter, in khaki, with a pith helmet and everything. And I thought it was Peter Byrne. but in fact was Stan Turner.
Wow.
And that, of course, bespoke the naval connection. There was a Navy connection. I was basically time traveling in childhood for the U.S. Navy. I was supposed to go to the Naval Academy upon high school graduation. So among the Navy people represented were myself, William Stillings. William Stillings' father, Thomas Stillings, had been a lieutenant in the Navy. Of course, Ross Perot and Stansfield Turner were naval, and William Cameron McCool, who was in my class, were Naval Academy graduates. So there was a Navy connection in there too.
So all these people that were there, yeah, do you think 97,000 people have been to Mars and back?
I think that we were told that many, many people had gone and perished. That may have been done for a reason. It may have been to acquaint us with the risk factor, with the kind of danger we were confronting. I would hang my hat on William Whitecrow's estimate that there were about 1,500 Americans there when I was being sent. So if I was there on a given day during my college years at UCLA, if I was on Mars rather than in class, okay? If I had driven over to the West Coast jump room facility at 999 North Sepulveda and taken an elevator to Mars, which is what we were doing, then I probably was there with about 1,000 to 1,500 other Americans.
And did whole families live there for till they died, or what's the deal with that?
There were settlers there who were usually single men who were living by themselves, but I don't remember encountering family groups per se. But at that point, the colony had not yet been created. We just had disparate jump room facilities. There were about 8 in the equatorial region. Randy Kramer reports that by 1987 he was living in the polar region in more of a family type group, that he had a wife there and more of a family type of experience. But we certainly were not encountering any family experience there. We were basically, adventurers on a frontier.
Got it. And so that you never seen any human kids there. You did see Martian kids, but not human kids there. Is that what you're saying?
I did not see human children there, and there, from my knowledge, to my knowledge, there were no human Earthling children there. The youngest individual that I know was there was William Stillings, who first went up when he was 14.
Wow. So what was your reason for when you went up? You only did a 4-year time frame of jumps? What were your reasons for going up there?
Well, I went up there because my country asked me to serve, and I did. The program was going up there. There's really 3 reasons. The first was so that Mars could become an extraterrestrial defense regime protecting Earth. Second, so they could claim Mars as U.S. territory in furtherance of the first goal. And then third, to acclimate the Martian humanoids and animals to our Earthling presence. But I actually asked, why do I have to go? I wasn't eager necessarily to become an astronaut. I wanted to become a journalist and a lawyer.
Oops, okay.
My country asked me to become an astronaut. But it makes sense because I could describe things with great
detail. Exactly.
And remember things. Yeah.
So when you were 19 when you did your first jump, what was that like? What was that experience like? What were you feeling before you even took off? What was that whole? What did that look like?
I was apprehensive. I don't know if I had butterflies the first time, but I was eager to get it started. So I was getting impatient in the jump room, and Courtney Hunt was talking to me through the intercom in the jump room, and I finally shouted, "Light this candle," referring to a statement that astronaut Alan Shepard made 20 years earlier on the ground on Cape Canaveral when he was getting impatient. I was just getting impatient with the jump room experience starting because we were told how mind-bending it would be. It was really mind-bending. Basically, you would stand in the elevator as it morphed from a box into a cylinder and back into a box, and we with it. So it was extremely mentally stressful. It was a great torsion effect as they punched us through the through the wormhole, so to speak, with the space elevator there in Basagio, or in New York City at the CIA headquarters.
So when you were in this chamber, when you were in this chamber, this was in California. Is that correct? Is that what I hear you saying?
Yeah, there were two jump rooms. There was one in the George Washington Bridge complex of the CIA in New York City, and there was one in a Hughes building in El Segundo, California, at 999 West Sepulveda.
I swear I know that exact building that you're talking about, if I'm correct. But anyhow, so you're in this chamber, like it's a white room, or is it a really small white room, or everything?
It was just an elevator. It was the elevator that we used to get up to the 5th floor of the building, the main elevator in the building.
Oh, really?
Dual use. When it would go from the 5th floor up to the 8th floor, it would lock in and become a space elevator, and then it would morph from a box into a cylinder and back into a box, and then the far wall would open up and we were on Mars.
Wow.
So there was some sort of trans-chronological generation of materials that undergird the jumping technology. The room itself was jumping to Mars.
And when
it wasn't taking off like a cannonball, it was traveling interdimensionally as a room to Mars.
Interesting. And when you went into that chamber, you were dressed in just casual attire, or what? How did you dress for that?
I was dressed usually in what I wore to school, and during those years, I used to wear, like, frequently, just for example, I might wear a flannel shirt, a pair of blue jeans, a leather belt, and my brown hiking boots, or like those work boots, those tan work boots that guys wear on construction sites. We were wearing those in the early 80s to some extent. So it just depended. Sometimes I wore like a polo shirt or a white T-shirt with a pocket, a pair of blue jeans, and sort of like black dress shoes or my hiking boots. Pretty much like you would during those years if you were camping, like you were going to Yosemite or something. We were dressed like that. We did not have spacesuits on. And so when that lady remembers seeing several guys at Mission Control, on Mars, and being photographed on Earth, they were dressed in their street clothes.
Got it. And so when you did that, did you ever take like a backpack or other stuff with you, or just your clothes, and you didn't even wear a jacket or anything? Is that correct?
No, I took very little. I took a photo flash gun, which was to protect myself and my team members, because I was a guard in the civilian context of the program. I wasn't an Army guard, but I was furnished a weapon to protect my people, and fortunately I never had to use it. I also carried a cyanide capsule in a plastic bag in my pocket in the event that I would rather suicide rather than be eaten if I got cornered by one of the inevitably lethal predators.
Got it.
Bernard Mendez sometimes carried a camera, and he took a photograph of Barack Obama and myself on the surface of the red planet. But I never, even then I had bad vision. I had glasses, and I was not a taker of photographs because of that reason. And so I didn't take any photographs there, and I didn't take anything back either that I can remember.
And how many? Go ahead.
Well, as Dave said during our training, your mission, your ultimate mission, basically is to be seen and not eaten.
Right.
Firing. We were going there just to sort of stand around and acclimate the Martians to our presence.
Interesting. And how many jumps do you think Obama himself made?
Probably as many as I did. I mean, we were sort of equally tasked in the program. We were the same age. We were like 45 days apart. We were trained in the same training program. We actually were in the same dorm room for a couple of days until I was provided another dorm room at College of Basagio is where we were training.
Oh, really?
So very pretty well. He was a cool guy. He was a nice guy, smart guy, kind of funny sense of humor. Pretty normal person, actually. Pretty conventional person. Conventional thinking. Intelligent, but not especially so. Respectful of other people. Just pretty much of a normal college student type person.
And so, go ahead.
No, I just lost my train of thought there. But
well, what I want to know is So you're saying, is it safe to say that Obama also made the jumps in about the same time period that you did?
Oh yeah, you asked how many he did.
Okay.
We were compartmentalized. So I mean, you might see somebody that you knew in training, like once in the facility of El Segundo or once on the surface. I saw Barry a couple times around Los Angeles during meetings that we held and that the program held, or that we held in regard to the program. A couple times at the jump room facility in El Segundo, and a couple times on Mars. And I did about 5 missions with him and Bernard Mendez as the team leader. With Bernard Mendez as the team leader.
Interesting.
So, yeah, among the people that I was trained with, I certainly went on missions with William Stillings, Courtney Hunt, that was one of the trainers. Bernard Mendez was one of the trainees. And then Barack was certainly somebody I saw more than most people I was trained with, but I didn't really see him that frequently. I saw him, it's kind of like the military, where you'll be trained with somebody at some Marine base or something, and then you'll see him in Saigon a couple times in Vietnam. And it was like that. It's like we weren't in the same teams, we weren't in the same units, but we had been trained together. And so when somebody showed up from your training group, you said hi to them, and you realized you'd already met them. We weren't like really close friends or allies, but it was definitely Barack Obama. He was using the name Barry Soetoro at the time.
Interesting.
And like I say, if he can become president, then really any bright American college student with as much as ambition as he had to be president can be president, because he wasn't that remarkable of a person.
Yeah, I hear you. So now, what the other thing that's interesting, Andrew, is that did you ever hear of the WESAC Festival?
No.
In Mount Shasta?
No.
Because that's where the College of Siskiyous is. That's where the College of Siskiyous is at. Is that correct?
I know that the College of the Siskiyous is in Weed, right?
Yep,
in the,
that's right.
Volcanic apron there of Mount Shasta, but I don't know about that festival.
Joshua David Stone, who wrote a whole encyclopedia set of spirituality, started doing this WESAC festival there. He did it for 10 years, starting around 1993, 1992, and literally I was for 4 years in a row. I was he made me the photographer, official photographer for that event for at least 4 or 5 years. And then 2003 was the last year that I actually went to that. So and there over 2,000 people from all over the world will attend this thing, and half of them from the United States and the rest from everywhere else. So I think that's an interesting correlation. And then you and I here are talking, but there was some I don't know, some secret caves and all kinds of stuff there in Mount Shasta, and there was all. In fact,
they were planning on turning Mount Shasta into the home region of the secret space program, in the way that Houston and Galveston Bay and so forth are part of the culture of the public space program. So that's why we were trained at College of Siskiyous. It was an out-of-the-way community college where if anybody walked past the door of our classroom, as 11 of us were being lectured about Mars, and 4 of our parents, about 15 people, somebody would just assume it was some kind of breath requirement in astronomy.
Right. Got it.
Not training us to go there.
Interesting. Well, this Joshua David Stone guy actually died about 2 years later, 2005, and that was the last year. 2003 was the last year I actually attended. And since then, it's actually it was there at the College of Siskiyous that you were talking about, this whole event. And after he died, in fact, after 2003, it grew a lot to about 200, 250 people, and they moved it to Mount Shasta, to one of the high schools there. But it was a huge event. Huge event there.
That's a pretty metaphysically advanced place. There's a great history in Shasta. I'm sure that was part of it. I think also there's geological formations there involving lava that look like some of the formations on Mars. So maybe they thought if they placed it in Shasta, they could take us up to some of those locations and familiarize us with what Mars looks like, but it really did not. They didn't do that. But they may have taken us to one of those a while bit.
Yeah, interesting. No,
Close to that.
another tidbit is that did you ever hear of a guy by the name of what's this guy's name? Babaji. Did you ever hear him? The guy that's like over 3,000 years old.
No.
He literally attended that WESAC festival for several years, and in fact I got photographs of him. He wrote a book called Doorway to Eternity, and he gave me a copy of it and autographed it, and then he moved back to India eventually.
When William Stillings and I went back there in 2011, we were able to verify that it was College of the Siskiyous where we were trained. And when we went up to the McLeod Market to reconnoiter it, because that's where our fathers had gone before taking us up to Lake Siskiyou, where we were introduced as classmates, and then the next day we went to class. We were basically chased out of town by an army guard pretending he was drunk. And he basically then kneeled down next to my window. I was in the passenger seat, and pretty much asked us why we were in town. And pretty much instructed us if we didn't get out of town that stop paying attention to the McLeod Market, that the next visit would be from Homeland Security.
Wow.
So there are power spots in that region that are being guarded. I don't know exactly what they connect up to. Probably the intelligence center beneath the Shasta Dam.
Wow. So, Andrew,
there's an intelligence facility beneath the Shasta Dam that's been there for decades.
Out of all the stuff, all these experiences that you've had throughout the years, what did you learn from all this? What did you feel? What was the most interesting adventure or experience? What was the most notable thing that you wanted to say, hey, wow, this was amazing, blah, 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 blah?
Well, just on a spiritual level, I learned that you can't go anywhere in the universe where God has not already been. So there's no need to be apprehensive about the environments you encounter as a conscious being. Individually, I would say there's no task that you're given that you're not capable of achieving. In other words, you're only given as much as you can stand.
Handle, yeah.
And also just kind of collateral to that, you can accomplish a lot more than you think. Simply believing in yourself and cooperating with others and focusing on what you're doing. Because at a young age, I had to be time traveling for DARPA and going to Mars before age 20. And so I'm somebody who believes in the potential of the human species. I don't think it was child abuse to involve me in this program. I mean, children get killed in different forms of play. They get killed playing football. And look, I lived time traveling within Mars. Well, I wasn't hidden within Mars, but I survived traveling to other times. So I don't really relate to that victocrat mentality that says, well,
exactly,
your dad
right.
that you be part of this, and that was child abuse and all that. No, it wasn't child abuse. It wasn't any more abusive than coming over the Atlantic Ocean with your kids. I mean, most of our ancestors, at least the European people of this continent, can say that their ancestors crossed a great ocean with their children. We haven't been talking about that being child abuse in the intervening generation. My dad, believed that anytime human beings went somewhere to a new world, a new realm, they brought their kids. They have to.
Right.
Usually they had to. Usually they were living with their kids around the clock, not just at nighttime away from work or school, right? So it was very primal for my dad to take me into the environments, the realms that he was traveling into. And he did, and I'm happy that he did. I have medical problems now that I'm battling, but I could have medical problems that would be battling at age 56 from exposures I had in some meaningless job.
Right.
I had those exposures at the most meaningful kind of jobs, and they were jobs that I was cosmically privileged to hold when I was a little kid and when I was a college student. So, I think that people can accomplish a lot more than they thought. Did you ever wonder how people stand on the top of that mountain and then do ski jumping in the Winter Olympics?
Right.
I mean, just think of it. It's at the top of a damn hill. And then they jump off with their ski and they're flying like 200 feet in the air. So we can do a lot as long as we remember that there's a God and that we're conscious beings, but we're created conscious beings. And that we're not responsible for our existence. God is. And that the worst that can happen probably is that we would be tortured rather than that we die. But yes, we can lose our life in given activity, but if we do, our consciousness goes on. So I was just able ultimately to relax with it. Although I must say there was always a grinding tension on Mars that we wouldn't get home. So it was really hard to shake that kind of apprehension.
Yeah, that's a lot of stress.
Apprehension. Yeah, immediate fear that we're going to get eaten or something. I was able to overcome that on Mars, but not sort of the grinding tension like, I wonder if we're going to get home, period. Just when the jumper was working. That was always kind of an issue for me, kind of a head trip. But that's what I learned, I think, in those experiences is that greater is in me than is in the world. And I was given the opportunity to show that.
So real quick, because we only got about 3 minutes left, when you did that jump, how long did it take? And did you feel really weird or something like that from doing that?
Well, that's the amazing thing about where space travel really is and how the public hasn't been told where it is for the last 50 years. When Mars was far from Earth in its 26-month irregular orbit around the sun, and hence it's 26, it's 26 months, so cycle irregular movement back and forth towards Earth. We were when it was the farthest, when we first started jumping, it was the farthest away, and it would take 20 minutes in the jumper. But
oh, really?
As the several years progressed and Earth drew close to Mars, it took about 8 minutes. In fact, that's when my father was approved because he had cardiac problems and pulmonary problems. So he had initially been disqualified for being in the jumper when the jump to Mars took 20 minutes. But when it took 8 minutes, he was approved to go with a medical orderly company.
And do
do
you think there's a lot more people there now than before?
Yes, there's probably a colony of some kind as described by Laura Eisenhower. David Wilcock estimates that it numbers approximately 500,000 people. I think that's probably true.
Wow, really?
90 seconds.
Go ahead.
No, I was saying it's probably the size of a small city or not unlike a university campus.
Interesting. So,
university campus was maybe 10.
Do you have anything coming up anytime soon, Andrew, that you want to tell people about right now?
Yeah, I'm going to be speaking about time travel and Mars in Kelowna, British Columbia.
60 seconds.
So,
and
look to my Project Pegasus group on Facebook for that.
When will that be?
February 24th.
Okay.
In Kelowna, British Columbia, Canada. So if you're in Canada or near Canada, in Washington State, for example, look to Project Pegasus on Facebook.
Right.
For that announcement.
So I want to thank you, Andrew. This is a lot of information that people, I think, for sure, for a little while anyhow, will really get their taste buds into. So and good luck in February with your lecture talk. And so
10 seconds.
I wish you well. God bless, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you, Andrew. It's fun being on your show.
Aloha. And all of you, thanks for
Aloha.
stopping by. Have a God Goddess week. Be the love that you are, always have been, and always will be. Aloha.